Upon being reborn, the first thing I did was tear apart the marriage application that my fiancé, Henry, was about to submit. In my past life, I had clung to Henry, insisting on marrying him. It wasn't until my final moments that I discovered he had been secretly involved with Olivia for 4 decades. Armed with this knowledge in my second chance at life, I refused to be so naive again. I would step aside willingly, allowing Henry and the woman he truly desired to be together. I had no objections to Henry providing for Olivia or even sharing half his income with her. However, I never expected Olivia's greed to stretch beyond my imagination. She even set her sights on my college admission letter. Absolutely not. I flatly refused her unreasonable request. The day after rejecting Olivia's demand, my relationship with Henry completely broke down. Soon after, the truth came to light. Henry and Olivia were caught together. In my previous life, I had been oblivious to Henry's dissatisfaction. I had eagerly embraced our arranged engagement, thinking he was simply a reserved man. While Henry devoted himself to work, I stayed behind to care for his ailing parents, sacrificing my own aspirations, including my chance at higher education. Throughout our 40 years of marriage, Henry and I spent more time apart than together. The moments we actually shared as husband and wife totaled less than 2 years. I took on the full weight of responsibility, raising our children and nursing his sick parents, all while longing for Henry to transfer back to my city. But he never did, not until the day I died. I had once believed he had no choice. Only in my final moments did I understand. Henry's distance wasn't due to circumstances beyond his control. He simply didn't love me. He wanted to be far from me, dedicating his time and efforts to Olivia instead. Behind my back, he secured Olivia a job and followed her across the country, north and south, wherever she went. His heart had always belonged to her. I had been nothing more than a fool, a joke. Holding my long-buried college admission letter to my chest, tears of relief streamed down my face. This time, everything would be different. In my past life, blinded by love, I had chosen to forego my education, thinking marriage to Henry was my ultimate dream. I had spent my life caring for his family, only to be cast aside. This time, I wouldn't let history repeat itself. I would go to college. I would build my own future. As for Henry? If he adored Olivia so much, I would gladly remove myself from the equation and grant them their happily ever after. Steeling myself, I stepped out of my room and found Henry seated in the living room. Before him lay the marriage application he had drafted but had yet to submit. His face was grim, brows furrowed as he studied the document, showing clear reluctance. In my past life, I had mistaken his cold demeanor for a reserved nature. Only on my deathbed did I see him smile in a photograph with Olivia. Proof that his aloofness had never been part of his character. He simply hadn't wanted to smile at me. Henry was hesitant about the marriage, but he was also an obedient son who wouldn't defy his parents' wishes. Likewise, my own parents were eager for me to marry him, believing it would elevate our family's status. In order to prevent the same fate from unfolding, I took the initiative. Approaching Henry, I picked up the marriage report and offered, "Let me submit this." Without waiting for his response, I walked away, carrying the document with me. I found a secluded spot, tore the papers to shreds, and let the fragments scatter into a nearby drainage ditch. Watching the pieces wash away, a sense of liberation washed over me. For now, marriage was no longer a concern. Next, I needed to focus on preparing for college. My parents had always pushed for my marriage to Henry. When I had been accepted into college in my previous life, they had done everything in their power to dissuade me, praising the benefits of being Henry's wife. Back then, blinded by love, I had listened. This time, I wouldn't. Determined, I gathered information on the requirements for college enrollment and the necessary expenses before heading back to Henry's home. As I reached the courtyard, I noticed a familiar scene. Henry stepping out of a car, carrying bags, accompanied by a young woman. Just like before, Olivia had been brought into Henry's life under the pretense of needing care and support. Henry's justification remained unchanged. Olivia's brother had lost his life saving him. Because of that, Henry felt obligated to look after her. In my past life, I had believed Henry was merely repaying a debt. I had never suspected anything more, until Olivia herself revealed their relationship. Had she not exposed the truth, I would have remained ignorant until my dying breath. Now I stood by, watching without emotion as Henry carried Olivia's luggage into the room prepared for her. This time, I knew better. Feeling my gaze, Henry halted and turned to look at me. "You're back," I responded with a simple hum. Just like in my previous life, he introduced Olivia to me. "This is Olivia, my comrade and sworn sister. She will be staying here until she goes to college." Until she goes to college? My heart skipped a beat as a sudden realization struck me. The university Olivia was set to attend appeared to be University A, the very same institution mentioned in my admission letter. In my past life, I had never given much thought to Olivia's connection with Henry. She had arrived at the compound with him and later enrolled at University A after our marriage. But today, while gathering information about the school, I carefully reviewed the admission list for University A. There were only 3 available spots. 1 belonged to me, and the other 2 to unfamiliar boys. Olivia's name was nowhere to be found. So how had she managed to secure a spot at the university? At that time, college entrance examinations had only recently been reinstated, and university slots could be reassigned. A chilling thought crossed my mind. Had I unknowingly given up my place at the university to marry Henry, thus allowing Olivia to take my spot? And if that were true, what role had Henry played in this? Had he married me simply to ensure that his beloved Olivia could go to college while I stayed behind to support him? Had my sacrifice paved the way for Olivia, who originally had no right to a university education? I didn't want to believe that Henry could be so deceitful and self-serving. But then I recalled Olivia's arrogant words from my deathbed in my previous life. "You selfishly kept Henry to yourself for over 40 years. Now it's my turn to enjoy our twilight years together." For decades, Olivia had shamelessly played the role of the other woman, showing no remorse, only pride. It made my suspicions feel all the more justified. Watching Olivia stand so closely beside Henry without a hint of restraint, I smirked to myself. "You two go ahead," I said indifferently. "I'll start cooking." I had only taken a few steps when a delicate, almost wounded voice sounded from behind me. "Brother Henry, did my sudden arrival disturb you and sister? I feel like sister doesn't welcome me very much." Her affected tone made the corner of my mouth twitch in disdain. My disgust reached its peak. I didn't bother turning around, but Henry's reassuring voice reached my ears clearly. "Don't worry. I promised your brother that I would take care of you, and I intend to keep that promise. As long as I'm here, no one will make you feel unwelcome." He had started defending her already. In my previous life, I must have been utterly blind. 2 hours later, Henry and Olivia returned. I had already finished preparing dinner. Olivia, ever the performer, made a show of offering to help in the kitchen. She even took it upon herself to serve the rice, yet she only filled 2 bowls, one for herself and one for Henry. Her intentions couldn't have been more obvious. Feigning ignorance, I quietly served myself and began eating without a care. When Henry and Olivia sat down, they both hesitated upon seeing the food on the table. There were 4 dishes: spicy tofu, spicy potatoes, spicy spare ribs, and a string bean soup, also generously seasoned with red chili peppers. Henry and Olivia both preferred mild, non-spicy food. Seeing the meal, Henry glanced at me, but I ignored him, focusing on my food instead. In my past life, I had always cooked according to Henry's preferences, preparing bland dishes to suit his tastes. But after being given a second chance, I refused to compromise my own comfort for his sake. As I enjoyed my meal, Henry's expression darkened. Olivia, looking pitiful as ever, turned her teary eyes toward him. Finally, Henry could endure it no longer and stood up. "Olivia can't eat spicy food. Next time, leave out the chili. I'll take her out to eat tonight." Without sparing them a glance, I continued eating, unbothered by their departure. After they left, I savored my meal in peace, eating until I was completely satisfied. Later, I took out the food coupons and money that had been set aside for the wedding. Carefully, I calculated everything. This was the savings we had prepared. Partly from my parents' frugal efforts, partly from Henry's family as a betrothal gift. But now, I had a different plan. I would be attending university soon, and I needed funds for travel, food, and living expenses. In my past life, I had foolishly handed this money over to Olivia for her education. This time, I wouldn't be so naive. I put the money, coupons, and my admission letter away before unpacking the wedding preparations. The red bedding, quilt covers, and pillowcases were no longer needed. Since the wedding was no longer happening, I decided to give these things away. Amelia, a kind woman from the compound, had a daughter getting married soon. She was surprised when I gifted her the wedding supplies and asked me several questions. I made up an excuse to brush them off. Returning home, I noted that Henry was still absent. After washing up, I went to my room, picked up a red pen, and marked a date on my calendar. Just 20 more days. Then, I would leave for university. That night, I slept soundly. I had no idea when Henry returned. The next morning, I made myself a bowl of noodles. As I ate, Henry emerged from his room. He hesitated at the sight of me casually eating without acknowledging him. A flicker of surprise crossed his face. I couldn't blame him for his reaction. In my past life, I had been obsessed with him, catering to his every need. I never made spicy food because he disliked it. I woke up early each morning to cook millet porridge to soothe his stomach. I would stand at the compound entrance to see him off to work and wait there eagerly in the evening to welcome him home. To him, I had been nothing more than a devoted servant, and he had treated me like a king would treat a lowly attendant. Not anymore. Now that this servant had suddenly changed and no longer put the emperor first, it was no wonder Henry found it unsettling. Seeing that I completely ignored him, Henry had no choice but to come over. "Olivia isn't familiar with this place," he said. "I took her out for dinner last night and showed her around before coming back." Was Henry explaining himself to me? That was rare, like the sun rising from the west. I casually responded while eating my noodles, "That's right. It's only natural for you to take care of her," I added. "You don't have to inform me about it in the future." Henry stood there for a moment, seemingly taken aback by my reaction. After all, I used to adore him. Henry was handsome, and many women admired him. I used to watch him closely, feeling uneasy whenever a girl spoke to him for too long. Now that I showed no interest in his relationship with Olivia, Henry sensed something was wrong. He studied me carefully before saying, "Olivia's brother died because of me. From now on, Olivia is like my sister. I will always take care of her. In the future, I'll give her half of my salary and food coupons." In my past life, after marrying Henry, I stayed home to care for his sick parents. Out of his 40 yuan monthly salary, he only gave me 10. I worked tirelessly from dawn to dusk, taking on extra jobs whenever I could just to make ends meet. And now, he was planning to give half of his earnings to Olivia? How considerate. He cared neither for his parents, his wife, nor his children. His heart belonged only to Olivia. Anger surged within me, and I had to resist the urge to slap his handsome face. But I kept my cool and said, "Well, go ahead and take care of her. I have no objections." Whether he gave Olivia half or even all of his salary, it had nothing to do with me. I wasn't going to marry him. I wouldn't waste my life caring for his parents. I was curious to see how his sick parents would afford medicine and food when all his money went to Olivia. After finishing my meal, I cleaned up and went back to my room. Yesterday, I had only given away the bed sheets, quilt covers, and pillowcases meant for the wedding. Today, I planned to clear out everything else. The books for the college entrance exams were useless to me now. I decided to sell them. Anything I had prepared for Henry had to either be given away or discarded. I quietly packed my things with the door shut. At some point, Henry left, but I didn't notice when. I sold the books as scrap and then took the cloth-soled shoes I had made for Henry and sold those too. Everything else that couldn't be sold, I tossed into the trash heap. Finally, I cut up the big red wedding characters I had prepared and threw them away. After finishing, I picked up a pen and marked another day on the calendar. 19 days remained until school started. I needed to prepare. I headed to the Supply and Marketing Cooperative. To my surprise, I saw Henry and Olivia there. They were shopping together like a loving couple. Henry was especially attentive, even picking out long underwear for Olivia. Olivia giggled, her voice sweet. "Brother Henry, that's enough," she said. "You don't have to buy more." "I asked around," Henry replied. "It gets cold where you're going to school. Better to have extra, just in case." They chatted like no one else was around. Then Olivia spotted me and spoke with a haughty tone. "Vivian, Are you here to shop too? Hearing her voice, Henry finally noticed me. The half-smiling, half-mocking look on my face made him uneasy. Olivia is about to start college, he said. I'm helping her buy some things. His eyes flickered to the pen, ink, paper, and brush in my hands. I already bought those for Olivia, so you don't have to. What made him think I was buying things for Olivia? Ignoring Henry, I took my purchases and turned to leave. Henry called my name twice, but I didn't look back. Instead, I quickened my pace. Behind me, Olivia's voice sounded timid. Brother Henry, it seems Sister Vivian really doesn't like me. I finished shopping and went home. When I opened the door, I found that Henry had already prepared dinner. That was rare, like the sun rising from the west. Seeing me, Henry called me over for dinner. I glanced at the bland dishes on the table and shook my head. I've already eaten outside. Henry's expression stiffened. I ignored him and went straight to my room. A few minutes later, there was a knock on my door. I opened it. What is it? Let's talk. Talk about what? I spoke with a cold tone. Vivian, are you upset because of Olivia? I'm only looking after her for her brother's sake. This is your concern, not mine. You don't need to keep telling me this. Henry noticed my impatience and adjusted his tone. Vivian, we're getting married soon. We'll be family. My concerns should be yours too. He still thought of me as the naive fool from before. His hypocritical demeanor only fueled my irritation. Henry, have you ever really considered our relationship? I asked, my voice calm but firm. I think we need to seriously rethink this wedding. I had intended to break off our engagement, but before I could finish, there was a knock at the door. Olivia's tearful voice came through. Brother Henry, I twisted my ankle. It hurt so much. Without hesitation, Henry went to help Olivia. He never returned that night. Of course, I didn't wait for him. I washed up, locked my door, and went to bed. I slept peacefully. The next morning, the first thing I did was mark a date on my calendar before freshening up. When I stepped out, I found Henry had returned. He had brought breakfast, buns, soy milk, and fried dough sticks. He greeted me with a rare smile. You're up. I simply nodded. He handed me the food. This is for you. I took it and ate in silence. He sat beside me. After Olivia hurt her ankle, she developed a fever. I was worried, so I stayed with her at the hospital all night. I see, I replied indifferently. In the past, I always greeted him with warmth. This cold response was new to him, and he clearly felt uneasy. Vivian, are you mad at me? No. Really? Of course. Why would I be? In a little over 10 days, we would be going our separate ways anyway. Seeing that I insisted I wasn't upset, Henry's smile grew wider. Yesterday, I saw you bought a pen, ink, paper, and brushes. They're for Olivia, right? Why don't we go together to give them to her? I looked at him and enunciated each word carefully. Henry, Olivia has you to take care of her. That's enough. She doesn't need me. The things I bought are for myself and have nothing to do with anyone else. He looked embarrassed at my blunt rejection. I didn't care. I have plans. I'm heading out, I said before leaving for the train station to check on tickets. The university was cold, so I bought extra thermal underwear and some toiletries before heading home. Surprisingly, Henry was there when I returned. Seeing me carrying shopping bags, he reached out to help. I dodged his hand and took everything to my room myself. He followed me inside. Your room looks emptier. I got rid of things I don't need. Seeing how distant I was, he stayed silent for a moment. We're getting married in a few days. Tomorrow, I'll go shopping with you for what you need. That was unexpected. No need. I rejected him immediately. Sensing my complete indifference, Henry rubbed his hands awkwardly. After a long pause, he finally forced out a sentence. I have something important to discuss with you, about your college plans. I stopped what I was doing and looked up at him in silence. Henry hesitated before speaking. I was thinking, after we get married, you probably won't have time for college. If that's the case, maybe it's better to give up your spot to someone who needs it more. For a moment, My mind went blank. Before, I had only suspected that Olivia got into college because I stepped aside. But now, hearing Henry say this, I was certain. Those two, how dare they? Fury surged through me, and I shot up from my seat, glaring at him. Give it to whom? I demanded. Henry looked startled. What's wrong with you? I'm just bringing it up for discussion. Discussion. A bitter laugh escaped me. In my previous life, I had worshipped him, putting him above everything. That's why he made this decision without even consulting me. Now that I no longer cared for him, he suddenly felt the need to discuss things? Henry, don't you think this is shameless? I said coldly. I'm not giving up my college admission. If someone wants to go, they should earn their own place. I won't let them take a shortcut through me. He hadn't expected me to resist so strongly and faltered. I just thought, after we get married you wouldn't have time. Then let's not get married. My voice was sharp and unwavering. His face darkened. You're the one who wanted to get married, and now you're backing out? What do you take me for? What do you take marriage for? I shot back, smirking. Playing the innocent victim now? If he had any shame, would he have treated me that way in my past life? It wasn't time to cut ties completely, yet. Suppressing my anger, I quickly gathered my things. I have something to do. I'll be going home for a few days. Henry followed. Why all of a sudden? I miss my parents, I said simply before leaving without another glance at him. I planned to stay home until the school term started. My parents were thrilled to see me, especially my mother, who bombarded me with questions about Henry. I brushed them off, but on the 7th day, I casually brought up Olivia. My mother's expression changed instantly. A single woman, and he's taking care of her? That's not right. Go back and keep an eye on him. She still thought Henry was a rare catch. What if someone steals him away? I shrugged. Then I'll find someone else. Don't be ridiculous, she scolded. Where will you find someone as handsome and successful as Henry? Determined not to let me stay, she practically pushed me out the door and sent me back to him. With no other options, I returned. As soon as I stepped inside, I heard noises from my room. A thief? In broad daylight? Heart pounding, I rushed inside, only to freeze in shock. My room was a disaster. Drawers yanked open, clothes tossed around, even my bed overturned. And standing in the middle of the chaos, rummaging through my belongings, was Olivia. She hadn't noticed me yet, muttering, "Where is it? Where did she put it?" My voice cut through the room like a blade. "What do you think you're doing?" Olivia jumped, but quickly regained her composure. "What does it look like?" she smirked. "Brother Henry told me to." So he had brought Olivia here while I was gone. Unbelievable. These two had absolutely no shame.
My eyes were blazing with anger. "Olivia, do you have any shame left? Get out of my room right now." Olivia looked like a dead pig unafraid of boiling water. "Are you angry?" "To tell you the truth, during the time you were away, Brother Henry and I have been living together. He's been so good to me. He makes me breakfast every day and dinner at night, and he even takes walks with me. Let me tell you, Brother Henry is really caring." I suppressed my anger and sneered. "So you like Henry? You want to marry him?" Being so straightforwardly exposed, Olivia's expression froze for a moment. I looked at her coldly. "Don't you know he's about to get married? Aren't you afraid of being gossiped about for living with a man who's about to get married without any sense of shame? What do I have to be afraid of? Brother Henry and I are a perfect match, a handsome man and a beautiful woman. As for you, you should take a good look at yourself in the mirror. Do you deserve Brother Henry? What childhood betrothal, it's all futile dross. I've heard from Brother Henry that if it weren't for your parents forcing him and him being a filial person, he would never marry you. I believe this is what Henry really thinks, but it doesn't mean Olivia can use it to accuse me. You've said so much. Aren't you just jealous and envious that I'm going to marry Henry? You say I don't deserve Henry, and I admit I may not. But are you so sure that you and Henry are a good match? You should also take a look at yourself in the mirror. Right now, you're just like me, without a job or a degree. Neither of us is nobler than the other. Pfft. That's just what you think. I'm about to go to college. After I graduate from college, I'll be on the same level as Brother Henry, and you'll be nothing. I looked at her coldly. You're going to college? Which college? Where's your college admission notice? Why don't you take it out and let me have a look? Olivia was stumped by my question and stammered, why should I show it to you? Anyway, I'm different from you. I'm definitely going to college. Just you wait and see. Olivia's expression was flustered. Although she tried to act calm, her shifty eyes betrayed her. She must have some ulterior motive. What on earth in my room is worth her taking such a risk? Looking at my messy room and then at Olivia's hideous face, I felt disgusted. How could there be such an extremely shameless person? I looked at Olivia coldly. Get out. Get out of here right now. What can you do if I don't? Olivia looked at me provocatively. Brother Henry asked me to move in. He said he would take care of me personally. He also said he's tired of you and feels disgusted when he sees you. The words of the young Olivia and the Olivia in her 50s overlapped. Shameless people never change their shamelessness, whether in the past life or this life. I sneered. Henry told you such things? You two are really confidants, aren't you? Of course. Brother Henry doesn't like you. He only agreed to marry you under duress. If you have any sense of shame, you should back out voluntarily and not make things difficult for Brother Henry. Where do you get the nerve to persuade me to back out? And in what capacity? When it comes to being shameless, you're probably the worst. At least I'm Henry's legitimate fiancé. What are you? I looked at Olivia and said word by word, Olivia, I know exactly what you're thinking. Don't you just want to mess around with Henry while I'm away? It's written all over your face that you want to have an affair with Henry. Are you afraid others can't tell? Let me tell you, I won't let a shameless person like you succeed. Being directly pointed out for her despicable behavior, Olivia was so angry that her face turned red. She lunged at me in anger, trying to hit me. How could I let her hit me? I moved to the side, and she fell to the ground with a thud. Before I could even savor her embarrassing fall, I heard Olivia's crying. Woo! You're bullying me. It hurts so much. It's killing me. Her quick change of expression left me stunned. Before I could react, I saw Henry with a gloomy face. Olivia complained in front of me. Sister came back and scolded me without asking what happened, saying I'm promiscuous and shameless for flirting with you. I replied to her, and then she hit me. I'm covered in bruises. Woo! Henry believed Olivia's words. The veins on his forehead bulged as he roared at me, Vivian, how could you be so excessive? Olivia pretended to be injured, and Henry, full of concern, picked up Olivia and left. The room became quiet. Looking at the mess on the floor, I felt very complicated. I always thought that I gave up the college quota after getting married to Henry, which allowed Olivia to go to college. But if that's the case, why is Olivia rummaging through my room? Apart from the admission notice, money, and food coupons, there's nothing else in my room. Olivia's such thorough search definitely isn't for stealing money and food coupons. After all, Henry gives her half of his salary. Olivia wouldn't stoop to stealing money. So could she be looking for my admission notice? What does she want with my admission notice? Suddenly, I thought of a question I'd never considered before. Could it be that Olivia didn't get to go to college because I gave up my spot, but rather she used my identity to get in? No wonder the admission notice I put in the box in my past life disappeared without a trace. Since I gave up the idea of going to college in my past life, I didn't think much of it when I couldn't find the admission notice. Looking back now, Could it be that Olivia used my admission notice and took my name to go to college? Back then, the procedures for going to college weren't that strict. It wasn't impossible for Olivia to have impersonated me. I also remembered that wherever Olivia worked, Henry followed. Could it be that in my past life, the two of them had been living together as a couple outside? I was trapped at home my whole life and never knew the truth until I died. In this life, I won't allow such a thing to happen. Henry came back very late. When he returned, he knocked on my door. "Vivian, let's talk." I opened the door. "Talk about what?" "About Olivia? I didn't hit her. She was rummaging through my things, and I just told her to leave. Then she attacked me and couldn't stop herself from falling. I have a mouth of my own and don't want to be a silent person being framed by Olivia and questioned by Henry. Anyway, I said what I needed to say first. Whether he believes me or not is up to Henry." To my surprise, Henry didn't seem to be trying to stand up for Olivia. "I have nothing with Olivia," Henry sighed and reached out to hold my hand. I took a few steps back to avoid his hand. There was a shocked expression on his face. After all, before, I was always shamelessly clinging to him. I would happily hold his hand even if he didn't reach out first. How could I possibly reject him when he took the initiative? My clear-cut attitude left Henry silent. His expression looked a bit hurt. "Vivian, there's nothing between me and Olivia. I just treat her like a sister. Don't think too much." "Really?" I sneered and looked at Henry. If I hadn't experienced those things in my past life, I think I would believe him. But now, I don't believe a single word he says. "Vivian, whether you believe me or not, I have to tell you that the only person I want to marry is you. I just want to fulfill my responsibility to take care of Olivia. She won't be here for long. She'll go to college soon. So, for my sake, can you get along with her peacefully for a while? The doubts in my heart haven't been resolved yet. Did Olivia get into college by taking my place or by using my admission notice directly? Does Henry know about this? Could he have been involved in planning all of this? After all, even if Olivia got my admission notice, she would need various certificates to impersonate me, right? Olivia surely doesn't have the ability to get those certificates, but it would be different if Henry helped. Thinking of this, I asked casually, "Which college is Olivia going to?" Olivia said it's University A. As expected, it's the same school as me. I added, "Have you seen her admission notice?" "Not yet. But Olivia has good grades, and it's normal for her to get into University A." Henry's expression seemed normal. I couldn't tell if he was lying or feeling guilty. But then again, he had the same look when he deceived me in my past life. I have to figure out the issue of Olivia going to college. To find out if Olivia was admitted to college, I just need to ask around. There are quite a few people from Olivia's hometown here. I'll ask someone to find out tomorrow. Early the next morning, I heard a knock on the door while I was still asleep. I opened the door, and Henry was standing there. "I prepared breakfast. Come and have breakfast." I nodded and went to wash up with a cold attitude. Henry followed me and tried to start a conversation. "What does the ticking on the calendar in your room mean?" "It doesn't mean anything." Seeing my cold attitude, Henry kept looking at me. I pretended not to notice and walked past him to sit down and have breakfast. Henry also sat down and watched me while having breakfast. He clearly seemed to have something to say to me, but I really had nothing to say to him. I quickly finished my breakfast and stood up. "I have something to do and I'm going out." "I'll go with you." Henry surprisingly wanted to follow. I didn't give him the chance. "You'd better go check on Olivia. See if she's had breakfast and if she needs your care. After all, you promised her brother that you'd take good care of her. If anything happens to her, you won't be able to explain it." After saying that, I left quickly without caring about Henry's expression. I went to find people from Olivia's hometown in the military unit to ask about her family's situation. Many people knew that Olivia's brother was a martyr, and I really got some information. The person who told me the news was a military dependent and had a good relationship with Amelia. I know about Olivia's family. Her brother was an outstanding person, and everyone praised him. But Olivia and her mother are really bad. The military dependent told me that both Olivia and her mother had very poor character. Olivia didn't even finish junior high school and was out loafing around. With that kind of background, how could she take the college entrance exam? It's a joke. Are you sure? I asked. Of course it's true. Olivia was in the same class as my youngest son. Her grades were terrible. She dropped out of school before finishing junior high. Besides, she got her leg injured in a bike accident during the college entrance exam and was recovering at home. When would she have the time to take the exam? This isn't something only I know. Several of U.S. military dependents know about it. So, Olivia, who didn't even finish junior high school, definitely couldn't have taken the college entrance exam. Since she didn't take the exam, where did she get the qualification to go to college? I already had an answer in my heart. I returned home in a bad mood and found that both Henry and Olivia were at home. Olivia's eyes were red, as if she had been crying. I walked in silently, past the two of them, and went back to my room. A few minutes later, Henry came to knock on the door. I opened the door, and he asked me, "Have you submitted the marriage report?" I didn't expect him to ask this, and subconsciously replied, "Yes, I have." Henry looked at me. "It's been so long since you submitted it. Why is there no news? It should have been approved by now, right?" I was shocked and immediately took over. "I'll go and ask." Henry didn't agree. "Let's go and ask together. And we can buy some things for the wedding, by the way." I couldn't find a reason to refuse. If we really went to ask, it would be exposed. I had to find a way to fob him off. While thinking, Henry added, "I just talked to Olivia and plan to send her home in a few days." I looked up at Henry and asked in surprise, "Why?" I thought it over carefully. "I don't blame you for being angry and misunderstanding. It really wasn't appropriate for me to take care of an unmarried girl like Olivia." When Henry said this, I thought he had realized his mistake and come to his senses. But what he said next made me feel as if I had fallen into an ice cellar. "Vivian, there's something I need to tell you. Olivia wants to go to college, but she didn't get admitted. She wants to use your quota." I stared at Henry without saying a word. Henry must have thought out his words long ago. "I thought that since we're getting married soon, you don't need to go to college, and I owe Olivia's brother a favor. It would be better to settle it this way, and it can also save you from misunderstanding." I tried to control my impulse to slap Henry. "How can we do that? I heard her grades are so poor that she doesn't even meet the requirements for a college quota." Henry was silent for a moment. "Olivia means to go to college using your name." Although I had already guessed their purpose, I still couldn't believe my ears when I heard Henry say this with my own ears. I asked word by word, "Go to college using my name? Impersonation? Don't you know this is illegal?" Henry was stumped by my question. He was silent for a while before saying, "If you don't say it, I don't say it, and Olivia doesn't say it, no one should know. What if someone finds out? There's no such thing as a wall that doesn't let in wind in this world. Besides, you're a soldier. If you engage in such fraud, what will others think of you? Do you still want to keep your position?" Hearing me say this, Henry fell silent. I believe he will consider it when comparing it with his own future. But I thought too much. Love conquered everything. Henry must have loved Olivia very, very much and was willing to take risks for her. After a few minutes of silence, He actually started persuading me again. Vivian, the three of us will never tell this to anyone. Nothing will happen. I never expected Henry to be so lacking in principles for Olivia. I was really furious. Anyway, I don't agree to this. I'll never agree. Why should I pay off the favor you owe? I won't give my quota to Olivia. No one can make me. The conversation between Henry and me ended unhappily. I was filled with anger. The shamelessness of Henry and Olivia made me extremely indignant. In my past life, they secretly did such a thing behind my back, and I didn't find out until I died. In this life, seeing that I was on guard, they actually came to me on their own initiative, hoping that I would continue to be at their beck and call. They were thinking too naively. I couldn't stand staying with Henry for even a minute longer. Anyway, I had to have a showdown with him. I wouldn't marry him, and the wedding was off. What he wanted to do with Olivia was his business. I wouldn't waste even a bit of my thoughts on them. I packed my things, and was about to leave when Olivia came. As soon as she entered the door, she said, "Vivian, Brother Henry asked me to come and get your college admission notice." I sneered at her. "Why should I give you my notice? Didn't Brother Henry tell you?" Olivia looked down at me haughtily. "He doesn't like you, but he was forced to marry you. If you don't hand over your admission notice, you won't be able to marry Brother Henry." "Who said I want to marry Henry? Anyone who wants this spineless trash like Henry can have him. I definitely don't want him anymore." I looked at Olivia and said word by word, "You can take the man as you like, but as for my college admission notice, don't even dream about it. I won't let a despicable and shameless person like you get it." Olivia flew into a rage out of humiliation and pointed at me, ready to curse at me. But in an instant, she changed her tune. "Sister Vivian, there's really nothing between me and Brother Henry. You can't wrong us like this. I don't care what's going on between you two. You two hypocritical, despicable, and shameless people deserve to be together and locked up. Don't come out and harm others." After I finished scolding, I saw Henry storming in, gnashing his teeth. "Vivian, what are you making a fuss about? Why didn't you submit the marriage report?" I didn't expect Henry to actually ask about the marriage report. At this point, I had nothing more to say. "Why do you think I didn't submit it? Don't you know very well? You want me to marry you and give up my college place to Olivia. How can you be so shameless? Do you think you're some kind of hot catch? Am I supposed to give up college and sacrifice for you? Let me tell you, Henry, I won't marry you, and neither you nor Olivia should dream of getting my college admission notice. I'll never give it to you." I thought Henry would fly into a rage after we had a falling out, but instead, he was rather calm. It was Olivia who got angry. She cried pitifully, "Brother Henry, you promised to take care of me. You promised my brother that you would take good care of me." I looked coldly at this pair of scoundrels. "What you two want to do has nothing to do with me. I'm leaving now. Henry, our engagement is off." Henry panicked and tried to stop me. "Vivian, it's not what you think. Listen to me explain." In front of Olivia, Henry said firmly, "I took care of Olivia only because I promised her brother. I don't have any romantic feelings for her. The only person I want to marry is you." Wasn't he going to repay her by asking me to hand over the admission notice for her to impersonate me? I didn't believe a single word Henry said. "Henry, let's be frank. I don't care what you want to do with Olivia. I just want to break off our engagement now." My attitude was resolute, and Henry was visibly flustered. He sternly told Olivia to leave, planning to coax me. But my mind was made up. I just packed my things and left regardless. I found a hotel and stayed there. Henry chased after me to the hotel and wanted to talk to me. I didn't open the door, and Henry stood outside and talked to me. He said he was wrong and asked me to forgive him. But no matter what he said, I remained unmoved. Henry had no choice but to promise outside that he would send Olivia away. I didn't care at all about his promise. I had made up my mind that no matter what, I would break off the engagement with him, even if it caused a big commotion. I just didn't expect that everything would change overnight. The next morning, I was woken up from my sleep. Amelia came and knocked on my door. "Something big has happened, Vivian. Something big has happened. Olivia and your fiancé were caught in bed together." Henry and Olivia were caught in bed, and neither of them was dressed. This kind of thing was no small matter. It quickly spread throughout the entire compound. It was said that last night, Henry somehow forced himself on Olivia. Then it was caught by a military dependent in the compound who knocked on the door. Olivia cried non-stop when she woke up and threatened to go to the leader. When I got there, I saw Olivia's eyes red and swollen, still crying. She looked like a complete victim. And Henry had a sullen face, looking as ugly as if he had eaten shit. Seeing me watching the commotion in the crowd, Henry opened his mouth, wanting to say something to me. But with so many people in between, he couldn't say it. Such a big scandal was no small deal. This was an act of having an improper relationship, and he could be dismissed. Fortunately, although Henry and I were fiancés, I hadn't submitted the marriage report. Since I, the victim, didn't make a fuss, it wasn't considered an improper relationship. The higher-ups intervened to protect Henry. He and Olivia got married to settle the matter without making a big scene. On the day I set off to report to school, Henry somehow got wind of the news and showed up at the train station. "I'm sorry, Vivian. I never meant to betray you. I made it clear to her and was going to send Olivia away the next day. I had even bought the train ticket. I don't know why this happened." He beat his chest and stamped his feet, filled with remorse, but I didn't feel anything about his apology. "I'm glad you two are together. You gave me a chance. I want to thank you and Olivia. Without Olivia's stunt, it wouldn't have been so easy for me to call off the wedding with Henry. After all, my parents thought very highly of Henry. They would never be willing to give up such an excellent son-in-law. Because of Henry's affair with Olivia, I became the biggest winner. I didn't need to spend effort dealing with my parents and also gained their sympathy." Henry's face turned deathly pale. "Vivian, you're the only one I like. I really only like you. Maybe what one can't get is always the best." Henry kept repeating that I was the one he liked. He said he knew I hadn't submitted the marriage report and was going to make up for it. He really wanted to spend his life with me. But I didn't want to live that kind of life with him. In my past life, I was so bitter and tired. If I had to repeat that kind of life, my rebirth would be meaningless. I'd rather choose to die. I didn't entangle with Henry any longer and walked straight into the waiting room without looking back. My college life was fulfilling and busy. A completely different life trajectory from my past life made me fully immerse myself in my studies. Time in college flew by, and after graduation, I was assigned to a very good government department. When I went home to visit my parents, I unexpectedly saw Henry and Olivia. Henry didn't rise through the ranks and reach a high position as he did in my past life. Instead, he was transferred to civilian work and went back to farming. It was said that after he and Olivia got married, their relationship was very poor. Olivia was always making trouble and causing a ruckus, which made it impossible for Henry to work. Olivia didn't trust Henry at all. Whenever Henry had contact with other women, she worried that he would be unfaithful. With all this constant trouble-making, Henry lost his job. In my past life, he advanced smoothly in his career and never cared about his parents at home, his wife, me, or his children. In this life, Because of Olivia, he finally stayed by his parents' side. The endless farm work and Olivia's daily tantrums made Henry look 10 years older. We met briefly at the station. I turned around and left without hesitation, walking away with big steps. My parents told me a lot about Henry and Olivia. The two of them often quarreled. In Henry's family, there were major arguments every 3 days, and minor ones every 2 days. Olivia didn't want to work and didn't want to take care of Henry's parents. She disliked Henry's parents for being sick and dirty. It was said that whenever they quarreled, Olivia would say, "It wasn't like this. It wasn't like this in my past life. Why has it become like this? It's all because you're useless." She said that Henry had achieved a high official position and that she herself worked in an office without having to do any household chores. Everyone laughed at Olivia for daydreaming. After all, with their situation, such good things could only happen in dreams. I listened to my parents in silence, and a thought came to my mind. Could it be that Olivia was also reborn? She was so certain that marrying Henry would lead to a good life, based on the trajectory of her past life, that she took risks. She tried to steal my admission notice in advance. When she couldn't find it on me, she tried to use Henry. She thought I was head over heels in love with Henry and would agree to any request Henry made. She never expected that I would reject Henry, and even less that Henry would want to send her away. So she staged a farce of the thief crying, "Stop thief." On the day I left, Henry stopped me at the entrance of the village. I had a dream. Vivian, in our past life, we were husband and wife. We got married and had a child. And then? I looked at him coldly. I'm sorry to you. I had nothing to do with Olivia. She stole your admission notice and impersonated you, and even threatened me to help provide the certificates. I was bewitched and agreed to her. Later, I was trapped by her. She clung to me like a ghost. Whenever I didn't agree to her, she would threaten to report me. Henry grabbed his hair. I was threatened by her for decades until you left. I don't know why it turned out like this. I didn't listen to the end and turned around to leave. The past is like floating clouds. I had already let go of what happened in my past life. Forgiving others is also forgiving myself. After all, people like Henry and Olivia aren't worth my remembering them forever.